Good afternoon, Magnolia community. This is Mr. Carson, 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher at Magnolia School, and I'm going to share some information to you today about one of my favorite musicians, and that would be Mr. Ray Charles, also known in the music community as the Genius. Ray was born on September 23rd, 1920, and unfortunately he passed away on June 10th in 2004. Ray was born in Georgia, so I guess we could say that was his home state, but he spent a lot of years of his childhood growing up in Florida, actually. This is, believe it or not, the house he grew up in. You can see it's in pretty rough shape, and even though this picture says it was 2004 and Ray didn't live in it at this time, when he was a child, it was a house that didn't have working heat or plumbing. They were fortunate enough they did have a fireplace, but they had to go outside to use the well to bring water into the house. Ray grew up during the time of the Great Depression, which was a really tough time for a lot of Americans. A lot of people lived in poverty, and Ray was raised by his mother, and they were no different. They struggled to get money, so their living conditions were pretty poor when Ray was a child. Ray began playing the piano when he was just 3-4 years old. And unfortunately, around the age of 4 is when he started to go blind. And by the time he was 7 years old, he had gone completely blind. Despite losing his sight, his mother still wanted him to try and keep up on his chores. So he had to learn to use other senses and go outside and fetch water from the well, and this fostered a good sense of independence in Ray when he was still pretty young. As I mentioned before, Ray's life growing up was pretty difficult, and along with growing up in poverty, he lost his younger brother and his mom. Both passed away when Ray was pretty young. So after his mother passed away, he decided to basically move to Jacksonville, Florida. He had, believe it or not, been expelled from school, and he thought he might be able to pursue a music career and have a better opportunity to achieve success by moving to Jacksonville, Florida. This is Ray's house now. They've actually, the town that he grew up in, they bought the home, and instead of tearing it down, they renovated it, and it's now a museum that you can go and walk through. And they have a historical marker outside that says it was the childhood home of Ray Charles. Before I move on, I want to point out that when Ray moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and he was only 15 years old, and he had no money, and he didn't know where he was going to live. So I just think it shows great courage and independence on his part that he was willing to take that risk. After staying in Jacksonville for a couple of years, he decided to move out to Seattle to further his music career. And upon arriving in Seattle, he decided to drop his last name. He was actually born Ray Charles Robinson, but at the time there was a very world-famous boxer named Sugar Ray Robinson. There's a picture of him. And Ray didn't want to, there to be any confusion between Ray Robinson, the boxer, and Ray Robinson, the musician. So he decided to just drop his last name, and from that point on, he went by Ray Charles. So while he was in Seattle, he formed his own band. They were called the McSun Trio, which was a combination of Ray's last name and one of the other members' last name. And one of the places that they often played a lot was called the Old Rocking Chair Club. This is a picture, kind of see it resembles an old house, but they played many, I guess you would call them gigs here, and it's kind of really the beginning of Ray starting to make a name for himself. He didn't stay in Seattle forever. He then got up, packed up again, and moved down to Los Angeles, and this is really where his career really began to take off. He had his first Billboard hit by just the age of 19, and here's another picture of the McSun Trio, and you can see what's interesting is that Ray at this point, as you know, he's not wearing those black sunglasses that we know him so well and recognize him in. But while he was in LA, he started obviously to record more music, and the decade of the 1950s, again, he gained a lot of popularity thanks to songs like Mess Around, I've Got a Woman, What I'd Say, and Hit the Road Jack. And at this point, I'd like to share a clip from one of those songs with you called What I'd Say. This just happens to be my favorite Ray Charles song, so please enjoy.
When you see me in misery, come on, baby, till my feet now. It's alright. Oh, you know, it's alright. Look up now. Hey, girl. Now play it one time. That's what I'm talking about. Roll it, baby. I'm gonna tell you, mama, tell you, pa, gonna sing you back to this song right now. Mama, you don't do it right, yeah. You know you don't do it right now. Oh, yeah. What I say, tell me what I say. Tell me what I say now. Tell me what I say. Tell me what I say now. Tell me what I say. Oh, I wanna know. Say I wanna know, no. Little girl, I wanna know. I tell you I wanna know. Oh, I wanna know, no, no, no. I wanna know, no, no.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed that video clip of What I'd Say. I think you'll notice that at that point in Ray's music career, he had graduated from the three-man band and moved up to a much larger band, even equipped with 4 backup singers. At this point, I'd like to share some of his accomplishments that he achieved in his lifetime, and there are many. I'll start with the fact that he was nominated for 37 Grammy Awards in his lifetime, and he won that award 17 different times. In 1986, he was given quite a prestigious award known as the Kennedy Center Honors Award, and this is an annual award given to people in the performing arts industry for their contributions to American culture. In the 1980s, he also received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in addition to the Kennedy Center Honors Award in 1986, he also was one of the first musicians ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 2014, to commemorate his accomplishments in his lifetime in music, the post office put his likeness on a stamp, and that was in 2014. And then sometime in the 1990s, he was the face of a Pepsi ad campaign that ran on multiple commercials during that time period. Despite all these accomplishments and awards that Ray Charles won in his lifetime, I think that his greatest legacy is really the influence that he's had on modern day musicians or musicians that came after him. So I'd like you to take a second I'd like to demonstrate that for you, and I'm going to play about 20 seconds of a modern day artist named Kanye West, and I'm going to play 30 to 40 seconds of a Ray Charles song, and I want you to see the comparison and the similarities between the two songs, even though they were recorded some 40 to 50 years apart from one another.
She take my money when I'm in need. Yes, she's a trifling friend indeed. Oh, she's a gold digger way over town that digs on me. She give me money.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with.
I got a woman way over town that's good to me.
Yeah, I think you could probably notice the similarities in those two songs. One being by Kanye West, and then "I've Got a Woman" by Ray Charles. And even though the lyrics are very different, and obviously the instruments or where the music is derived from is quite different because the songs are recorded 40 years apart from one another, I think it's easy to see that that Ray's music definitely had an influence over Kanye West. I'd like to move on to some fun facts now about Ray Charles. Obviously, we know Ray was a tremendous piano player, but he could also play the organ, the trumpet, the alto sax, and the clarinet. He also learned musical composition, and he could play classical piano as well. At one point in his life, he refused to play a concert in Augusta, Georgia, because it was a segregated venue, and Ray wouldn't play that venue or play a concert there until it had been desegregated. Ray, despite being blind, was also a very accomplished chess player, which is very interesting. One of his songs, called "Georgia on My Mind," is actually the state song for the state of Georgia. And finally, Jamie Foxx played the role of Ray Charles in a movie made about his life. And Jamie Foxx actually won an Academy Award for his performance in that role. I'd like to finish with just a couple of reasons why I chose to speak about Ray Charles today. Number one, obviously, I really enjoy his music, and I can appreciate his musical genius. But really, what's most impressive, and I think what I most admire him for, is just the courage and determination he showed throughout his life. He was able to persevere despite a physical disability and growing up in extreme poverty, suffering the losses of people close to him, like his younger brother and his mother. But he still persevered and finally, standing up for what he believed. So thank you very much. It's time for me to hit the road, Jack. Take care.
Well, I guess if you said so, then I have to pack my things and go. Yeah.